My name is Adam Vanni, and I'm one of the founders of JARR Kombucha. We're a kombucha brewery based in Hackney in East London. Basically, I was living in Los Angeles, where I'm from originally, and my friends and now business partners came to visit me in LA, and I opened up the fridge and I had loads of kombucha, and they had just been introduced to kombucha in Auckland in New Zealand, where they're from originally, but they run a craft beer brewery in London called Crate. So they basically convinced me to learn how to make it, and I moved over to London in 2015, and we started brewing kombucha on a small scale initially, and then eventually scaled up to a commercial operation. So coming from Los Angeles and going to school in San Diego, I'd always been into kombucha, although initially I didn't like it. For the first year or so, kombucha was just not something my palate could make sense of, but because it started popping up in more and more places that I was visiting, cafes, restaurants, gyms, yoga studios, I started drinking more and more of it, and I became obsessed with it. And then it became a bit of a habit, and I started spending too much money on it. And I didn't know how to make it though. You know, I never knew that you could brew it at home. I just knew that you could buy it at Whole Foods Market. So it wasn't until 2015 that I actually learned how to make it, and then we started starting our own business. I think that when we started, we were the 4th brand in the UK, and it was very much a health product. It was something you would only find in organic shops, and there wasn't an awareness of it. So I think as a brand, we helped sort of breach that gap between the organic space and the more kind of mainstream space. So, you know, selling to places like Harrods and Selfridges and Whole Foods Market and Planet Organic, and then loads of coffee shops and on Amazon, stuff like that. So for us, it's been about sort of taking away, well, not taking away, but shifting the perspective of kombucha from just a health drink to something that's a bit more cool. That's something that people are really interested and intrigued by and are kind of proud to have on their table, you know, when they're drinking it, rather than something that's like purely for health purposes. So from our perspective, kombucha is very much a flavor-led beverage rather than a health beverage. Because if it doesn't taste good, people aren't going to drink it. I think scaling up from a home brew to a commercial brewing operation, it's a completely different beast. It's a completely different experience. The bacteria behaves differently. So I guess my biggest advice would be to grow slowly, to gradually scale up rather than jumping from 1 or 2 liters to 1,000 liters overnight, because you're going to encounter problems. And also not trying to do everything yourself. Like building a team, where everyone balances each other and supports each other, because brewing, selling, marketing, bottling, packaging, distributing, it's a team's job. It's not a one-person job, and it takes a sort of a team to get this off the ground if you want to do it commercially. I think, I don't really know in terms of figures, but it's still a very nascent, small category in Europe. The States is, I believe, eclipsing $1 billion in sales, but even then there's only 10% awareness in the United States of what the word kombucha even means. I would say a fraction of a percentage of people in the UK, let alone Europe, even know what kombucha is. So it's still very, very early days, and I think we're seeing a huge kind of push towards fermented beverages, simple ancient processes of creating these things through the process of fermentation. And in kombucha in general, I think it's going to start moving into other categories like alcoholic kombucha, kombucha on tap, things that make it more accessible to people who maybe weren't clued up on the health-giving properties of kombucha, but might want to have a healthy alcoholic beverage, or might want to have a non-alcoholic beverage on tap alongside beer or cider. So just today at Kombucha Summit, I've run into a bunch of people that I know that we've sort of helped in the past, kind of scaling up, and also people we've seen at the European Kombucha conference that we hosted in 2016 at our brewery. So it's really nice reconnecting with people and hearing everyone's stories, because the kombucha world is this quite like an open and loving community of really good people who are just in love with this beverage and just trying to share it with as many people as possible. So I think it's a really positive event, and I think a lot of people are gaining insights that they otherwise wouldn't have had. Because generally speaking, at least when we started brewing, we didn't really have access to any information about commercial kombucha brewing. So I think this is a really necessary space for people to learn and grow and network.